Hey everybody, happy 33rd Sunday of Ordinary Time, but more to the point, here at St. Al's we're celebrating our patronal feast. November 15th is the feast of St. Albert the Great, our patron as a parish. Um, we are reflecting this Sunday on the readings from the 33rd Sunday of Ordinary Time. We have the option of using readings from the Common of Doctors of the Church or the Common of Pastors, but Father Tom and I have chosen to reflect on the readings that would be for this Sunday in Ordinary Time, even as we're celebrating the Mass of St. Albert the Great. The gospel is a striking one. It's the gospel of the talents, as each of these three servants are given a different amount of money, as it were, of wealth to do with as they will. And when the master returns, he kind of asks for an account. And during November, of course, the church continues to invite us to really think of final things, of the end of things, of the last things, and to be prepared to meet the Lord when he comes in whatever way that happens. Just a couple things about the parable. We notice that the amount of money given, a very great sum to each of the servants, is given as a gift. It's not something they've earned. It's not something they deserve. Second of all, notice that the reward that's offered is actually far beyond the amount that they've earned. So they're not told, for instance, keep what you've earned, or here's twice what you've earned, but they're told that they'll be given very great responsibilities, and they're welcomed into the joy of the master. So into the kind of the fullness of the heavenly kingdom. Finally, we just see that it doesn't seem that reward is even basically proportionate to what they've earned. So for instance, the two different servants who've earned something with the gift, who've kind of allowed that gift to bear fruit and to multiply, they're not apparently rewarded differently. And the one who is judged for not trying. And that's the big point I'd like to make, that I'd like to kind of like run with here and to kind of apply to our lives, is that it seems that the parable suggests not so much that the Lord requires a certain amount of performance or certain rate of earning, rate of return from us, but rather that he demands that we take the gifts and talents he's given us, and we do our best to try to let them abound, to let them bear fruit in whatever ways possible. So in each of these respects that I've mentioned about the parable, this is true of our lives. Everything we received is a gift: life, breath, opportunity, gifts, and talents. Perhaps those gifts are very varied, as they are in the story. If you line up me and Michael Jordan, I think it's pretty obvious who's the better basketball player. I don't have basketball skills. So we have some gifts, we don't have others. And yet the Lord invites us to try with him. And he offers us kind of as our reward, eternal life, which is greater than anything we could do, greater than anything we could earn. And so the requirement, as it were, is that we would use the gifts, that we would put them to work, that we would allow them to abound and to bear fruit, without really counting the cost, without measuring the degree primarily, but that we would be on the path with our pointed towards the Lord, kind of doing our best when he comes. Let me just talk about three areas where we think we can apply these things, and then just to say a few words about where we can see this example in the life of St. Albert the Great. Three areas: prayer, virtue, and forgiveness. As we seek to live the life of prayer, which is essential to our life as Christians, if we don't pray daily, we're basically kind of turning our backs on the Lord and living our lives according to our own measurements and our own efforts. And brothers and sisters, that doesn't go very well. It doesn't go anywhere as beautifully as what the Lord desires for us. As we go to pray, we oftentimes find that that's a struggle. Sometimes we fall asleep, sometimes we get distracted, or sometimes we intend to pray and we don't succeed. Sometimes we pray and it doesn't seem to bear fruit in terms of our interior disposition. We don't necessarily experience consolation or insight. But in the life of prayer, I would propose we're invited to try. We're invited to do our best. Just an anecdote from here at St. Al's. Earlier this fall, one of our freshman ladies came kind of bleary-eyed out of the church about 2:30, 2:45 as I was setting up for another event. And I said, where have you been? Or where have you been here the whole time? And she said, oh, Father, I went to pray after Mass and I fell asleep. So she had taken a solid kind of 2.5 hour nap after Mass that day. So we joked about it, and I still tease her about it. But wouldn't that be wonderful, right? If when the Lord comes, he finds us, resting in his presence, even if it's not all that we intended. Second of all, the life of virtue, right? We try to do what's good and to reject what's evil, and we have varying degrees of success any day, any week in that. People frequently come to me in confession and say something along the lines of many, many people. I've said this myself. It seems that I keep confessing the same things. If I know the person well, sometimes I tease them a little bit and I say, wow, I'm really glad actually you're not like, Father, I committed 3 brand new sins this week. And I wouldn't be like, oh, good for you. You're, kind of exploring new territory. So we really should be grateful if the areas of struggle haven't expanded or multiplied, but it can still be very discouraging to find ourselves struggling with the same kind of habitual areas of vulnerability. And yet, in the life of virtue, the Lord forgives us every time we ask for mercy. He doesn't tire of forgiving us. We don't necessarily have the power to guarantee that we'll never make a mistake in the future, but with the Lord's help, we can persevere. We can stay on the path. We can keep seeking to cooperate with His grace towards what's good and away from what's evil. Finally, just the third place of application would be forgiveness, an area relevant to our relationships. There could be many other areas, but I've just chosen these 3. With forgiveness, you know, again, we try to forgive, we desire to forgive, maybe we know we should forgive, and yet that process continues. It's a little bit unexpected. It takes twists and turns. We maybe choose to forgive as an act of the will, but we don't always feel tender or affectionate, or we don't always feel peace about that. 2 really good prayers can be, Lord, help me to forgive. That's a great prayer. If even that seems out of our reach, we can say, Lord, help me want to forgive. It's a perfectly good prayer, brothers and sisters, to ask the Lord for help to do that which He desires of us, to seek forgiveness, knowing that if we offer mercy to others, we're able to receive mercy ourselves, trusting that even if that path of reconciliation, of healing in our hearts is long and unpredictable, the right path is always to kind of persevere, to try, to attempt to cooperate with the Lord's grace. Just to close, one kind of maybe nugget from St. Albert the Great's life. St. Albert was renowned for his knowledge of the natural sciences, but he was also a philosopher and a theologian. One area of particular interest in his philosophy was his study of Aristotle. While some of Aristotle's works had been present in the West before the time of St. Albert the Great, around the time of his life, the 11th, 12th century, going into the 13th century, that time period was a time when Aristotle's fuller philosophical works were becoming available in Europe. And they had ideas that people weren't necessarily familiar with. And a lot of people were like, well, Aristotle's a pagan. We can't trust him. Don't use his material. But St. Albert saw a really great potential, that there were ideas and forms of analysis, there were philosophical tools there that were potentially of great value. He began the process with others of kind of sifting through that and seeking to understand that, to putting it at the service of the gospel. That would, of course, be taken to a far fuller degree of perfection by his protege and student, St. Thomas Aquinas. But Albert was somebody who tried, right? He didn't accomplish all of that. He later in life, after his protege had actually died young, St. Thomas Aquinas died around 49 or 50. St. Albert actually found himself in his later years defending St. Thomas's work against those who said it should be rejected, it should be ignored by the church. So he had that courage, he had that creativity to try to use new tools, if we could say new technology, in terms of philosophy. I think that's a great example for us. We encounter opportunities to serve, we encounter opportunities to try without the guarantee of success or the guarantee of results, and it seems to me that the Lord calls us to that. Finally, as we prepare at Mass, if you're able to come to Mass today, or as we prepare to make a spiritual communion, Jesus offers us grace. And He sends us forth then with that grace. He wants us to take that gift we've received, a gift we don't deserve, we could never earn, and He wants us to kind of put it to work in our daily lives, to cooperate with that gift, not to bury it, not to kind of say, well, I'm done with Mass, I can go about my own way now until I come to Mass again a week from now, but to really allow that gift of the Eucharist, to allow the gift of His grace in a spiritual communion to abound. We beg the Lord that by His grace we would allow His gifts to bear fruit in our lives, and that we would keep trying, that we would keep persevering, even if the outcomes are oftentimes uneven or difficult to predict. Know of my prayers for you, and please pray for me. God bless.